Yo guys, Jungle King here. Huge shout out to LolFit for allowing me to work with him on today's video. Today we're going to be going over 5 tips every Evelynn player should know. Alright, so first and foremost, we're going to be talking about Evelynn's abilities and how you can leverage her kit and her playstyle in your games to make sure that you are consistently carrying, because I gotta say guys, Evelynn is not the easiest champion out there to play. We can see very clearly here that Riot Games, they list her as like a 2 out of 3 difficulty. I'd reckon she's almost a little bit harder than that, so I'm going to tell you guys exactly how you should be using her abilities and leveraging them in order to actually win games and carry solo queue, because if you can do that correctly on Evelynn, games will be very easy, especially at lower ranks. If you're silver, if you're gold, if you're platinum, you will be just hard carrying, hard smurfing almost every single game if you use these tips. So what are these tips, you might be asking? Well, let's take a quick look at Evelynn's playstyle before we get into that. Evelynn is a late game assassin mage who does an incredibly high amount of damage in the later stages of the game. That doesn't mean that she's not strong earlier on in different situations, but she definitely hits her groove in the late stages of the game when she can just one-shot absolutely anybody with her insane scaling ratios and her absolutely absurd burst damage that she gets within her kit. Now, how do you play to her strengths, you might be asking? Well, there's a number of things that you want to be doing on Evelynn to make sure that you are playing to her strengths and playing to the late game. I'd say the first and foremost thing is you got to learn how to full clear on this champion. You want to be clearing all 6 of your jungle camps. You want to be going through your entire jungle, followed up by a scuttle crab, because you can do it if you do it fast enough. And you want to be then resetting or looking for a gank at that point in time. It's really important to get your items as soon as possible on Evelynn, because once you get 2 to 3 items, you can start very easily one-shotting squishy targets, and that's your entire goal on Evelynn. So when we look at Evelynn's abilities, you know, she has a very long-range hate spike. She has a charm, which when hit on a squishy target is basically a guaranteed kill. She has a very high damage burst ability with her E, and then her ultimate is a fantastic execute. So generally speaking, when you are looking to fight somebody with Evelynn, you want to lead with your charm, and you want to just walk right up to them. You want to walk right into their face, like until you're right beside them, and then you want to wait for them to use a dash or flash. Then you throw your hate spike out to charm them towards you, followed up by a full combo, which would be an E into maybe an auto attack, the rest of your Qs, into maybe an ultimate right after to secure the kill. Now that will be the first tip that we go over here in today's video. Let's move on to tip number 2. Alright, so straight into tip number 2, we're now going to be talking about rune pages on Evelynn and which ones you should take in what situations. In my opinion, there are 2 main rune pages you want to be taking on this champion, and I'll go over exactly why for both of them. So first and foremost, the first rune page we're going to go over here today is, of course, Electrocute with Sudden Impact Eyeball Collection, Relentless Hunter, Secondary Tree. You can see we're running Absolute Focus with Gathering Storm. As we went over earlier with Evelynn, she is a very strong scaling champion, and both Absolute Focus and Gathering Storm are so strong in the later stages of the game, so that's why this rune page is really good. Now, why do you want to take this rune page? Because you know there are 2 options. So this rune page is good when you know you're not very hard to beat in the early game, because with this rune page, you're able to scale and you don't really need to worry too much about your opponent. This is just for you to get into the late stages of the game for your win condition, which is of course late game Evelynn. And you know, of course, Gathering Storm and Absolute Focus are going to complement that playstyle extremely well. Now, what is the other rune page, you might be asking? Well, quite simple. Secondary Tree, you just switch it over to Inspiration here, and you run Magical Footwear and Cosmic Insight. Now, why would you want to run this rune page over the other one? Well, this one, as you may have already guessed, is really good when you're against matchups that hard smurf on you and just destroy you in the earlier stages of the game. If you're against the Kazakhs or somebody else who can invade you and really just destroy you in the jungle, you want to take a safer start, and getting the free boots is very cost efficient, of course. That's 300 gold you don't need to spend, so you can lose a couple of camps to an invade. And of course, Cosmic Insight actually allows you to get an extra smite on your clear, guys, which is extremely important. Getting that extra smite on your clear with the extra summoner spell haste will allow you to clear your jungle faster and mitigate the damage of an invade if it does happen. Now, without further ado, we are going to move on to our next tip here on the list. Okay, now to move on to tip number 3, and that is going to be building towards the game state of your game, because you won't want to be building the same items every single game on Evelynn. So we're going to go over some different itemization options that you will find very useful that you can apply to your games to make sure that you aren't always building the same exact thing and you're building to the game to make sure that you are being just as gold efficient as you possibly can be, guys. So first and foremost, I'm going to talk about mythic items here on Evelynn. There are 2 main options, and that's going to be Rocket Belt and that's going to be Night Harvester. Now, why do you want to build Night Harvester? Why do you want to be building Hextech Rocket Belt? Well, it's quite simple in my opinion, guys. If you are an experienced Evelynn player and you understand how to play the champion, always go for Rocket Belt. Why? Because you'll have no problems using the extra dash mechanic, and the extra magic pen that you get from this item with the mythic passive is just going to be a lot better for the more experienced Evelynn player. Now, when you're first playing Evelynn and you're learning her, pretty much always go for Night Harvester, guys. It's less for you to focus on initially, so you can learn the basics of this champion first and foremost, and then eventually you can look to start building the Hextech Rocket Belt when you're more comfortable and you understand how to combo on her without this item in the mix of everything. So, because I'm a more experienced Evelynn player and I've played a lot of this champion, I've climbed a diamond playing her, I'm building the Rocket Belt. Now, next up here, we have so many different magic items that we can build. What do we want to build? Well, it depends on what's on the enemy team, guys. Do we notice that there's a lot of magic resist and tanks on the enemy team? Well, that probably means that we're going to want to build a couple items early that give us magic pen. What are some examples? Well, we have a Void Staff. We have Sorcerer's Shoes. We have, you know, other snowbally items like maybe a Magi Soul Stealer, right? It really depends, but all these items can be very good. Now, guys, my recommendation is if you are getting a lot of kills in the earlier stages of the game, you'll almost always want to pick up a Dark Seal, just so that if you just so happen to get this item to 10 stacks, you can go ahead and you can upgrade this to a Magi's Soul Stealer. Now, if you're against an enemy team that has a lot of kill threat against you, like maybe they have a Zed, maybe they have a LeBlanc, any champion that can really gap close on you and that has absolute nukes in their kit, you're going to want to itemize a Zhonya's Hourglass. This item is very, very strong on Evelynn. It gives you everything you need. It'll give you some resistances, it'll give you lots of ability power, and of course, ability haste is always welcome on this champion. Now, Banshee's Veil is also a very good defensive option if you're against a lot of people that can one-shot you. I would say if you're against, like I said, any like mages that, you know, maybe would kill you, like an Echo, like a LeBlanc, like maybe even some longer range mages like a Nivea and Xerath, a Banshee's Veil can single-handedly save you. If you're ever against an Annie on the enemy team, guys, I always recommend building this Banshee's Veil pretty much right off the hop. It gives you an insane amount of ability power and lots of magic resist as well. Now, of course, highly recommend picking up Void Staff against heavy magic resist teams. Moving on from there, Horizon Focus is a good item occasionally. Only recommend building this 4th or 5th item. Your Q, it just goes outside of the hyper shot range, so you do get that bonus damage. It's just barely, but it is really good. Now, another item that you will want to consider building quite consistently, actually, guys, is Rabadon's Death Cap. Now, when is Death Cap a good option to buy? Well, one, if you have a fully stacked Magi Soul Stealer and there's not very high kill threat on the enemy team, Rabadon's Death Cap is a fantastic item to build, so do consider building it. Now, the only other item here that I'd recommend you ever really build, guys, that we haven't gone through yet, is Lichbane. Lichbane can be very good if you are very far ahead too. It very recently just got a buff as well. I will say it's not the most cost-efficient item out there, but it is really good for snowballing. So I would recommend buying this if you have a lot of kills early and you're snowballing very hard. It can just help you, give you that extra damage to one-shot people. And it is a 3,000 gold item, so, you know, it's not as expensive as, say, like a Rabadon's Death Cap in that situation. But that'll be the end of our itemization, guys. Do take all of this and research it and just understand it and make sure that you're applying it to your games, because items, they really do matter. Now on to the next tip, and this is going to be a tip for ganking on this champion. I talked about this a little bit earlier in the video, but I'm going to give you a live example so you know exactly how to pull it off. And guys, normally when you're ganking on Evelynn, you are looking for flanking positions. So first and foremost, if there's no control wards in any of the bushes nearby, you want to be looking for the best flank position possible. Fun fact, you can walk right through here without the tower even seeing you whatsoever. Now, when you get here, guys, do not panic. Do not throw out your abilities right off the hop. It's very, very important that you play your abilities sequence correctly and you don't just go ham on the enemy. I see too many Evelynn players do this, so take a deep breath, focus up, and listen. So, what do? We throw out the charm, and we walk directly on top of our target, like this. And what we do is we make the enemy panic. We make them sweat. We make them profuse from every single pore in their body, and we force them to throw out their dash in panic of you using a Q on them or your E on them. Now, why is it so important that you don't proc this right away? Well, if you proc it too early, you won't get the charm. But you can throw out your Q as soon as it procs, and if they dodge that, well, your other 3 Qs will be in perfect position to chase them down. Generally speaking, when you have a flank position like so, your enemy that you are ganking will try and take a path that is going right through you. This is why you're trying to show up behind them, right? You want to make it as hard as possible for them to get out of this position. So you have the charm on, and they're basically just forced to walk into you, and you just continue walking within their line of where they're looking to go, and you just combo them out. This gank will allow you to get so many more kills on Evelynn that you didn't get before. And when I was a noob on Evelynn, guys, and I didn't know this, I let so many people escape that should have been free kills. So once again, throw your charm onto them, get right into their face, make them sweat, throw out your Q, combo them after. Don't go all willy-nilly. Don't throw out all your abilities in there like you have your head chopped off like a chicken. You know, just get in there, throw it in there, you know, and then combo them out. Get the free kills, guys. It's easy pickings. Let's move on to the next part. Okay, guys, now we're going to be moving on to the last tip of today's video, and this tip, guys, is very, very useful as well on this champion. I think every Evelynn player should know this. Now, what is it, you might be asking? Well, Evelynn, as you may know, is a champion whose combos aren't really all that sophisticated. They're actually very, very simple. So I'm not going to be necessarily going over combos, but instead I'm going to go over ability spacing and how you should look to kite your opponents with your abilities, guys. Now, you probably noticed that your Q range is pretty far, right? In fact, it's just further than your stealth passive vision range. So if I'm standing right here, I can throw it out, right? And I just need to walk a little bit closer to get my Qs going in there, right? Now, what you want to be doing when you're looking to duel somebody who has full HP, guys, who you know you can't kill with one combo, is you want to be looking to kite them with your Q, kind of like an ADC would be kiting with auto attacks. You just want to be staying just outside of their range, throwing Qs out like this, and just kind of kiting them away, right? And this is really important. This way you can whittle opponents down and then look to fight them right after, and you can really, really surprise them with your amount of damage early game. And this is especially important in the earlier stages of the game, not so much late game, because late game you'll just be one-shotting everyone. But you just want to be looking to kite, doing this, and then when your opponent does get low enough, after maybe a couple rotations of your Q that's on a very low cooldown, you can then look to go in, maybe land a charm as well, you chase them down, and then look to finish them off finally with your ultimate, guys. Do make sure that you're using your spacing appropriately on Evelynn, and if you don't really know your ranges quite yet, not a big deal, guys. Hop on a practice tool and do try a couple things out here and there just to see what you can get done in the game. Now, another tip real quick here, guys, is using Rocket Belt and when to use it, and a quick little tip as on top of that is, look at this, guys. Rocket Belt does not proc your charm, but your Q does, and that's actually really, really important, because you want to be using your Rocket Belt, generally speaking, at the very, very start of your combination with Evelynn. You want to use it to lead. You'll throw a charm onto a squishy target. You'll start stalking them. And then just as it's about to proc, you Rocket Belt in, get into range, and look to get the one shot off, guys. So do be applying this in your game if you guys are starting to build a Rocket Belt and you're getting a little bit more confident in your Evelynn play. But that will be the last point of today's video, guys. And that is a wrap, everybody. I really hope that these tips and tricks did help you all in some way. Once again, huge shout out to LolFit, everybody. If you haven't subscribed to his channel yet, make sure you do. He makes fantastic content, very educational, very informative. I can't thank LolFit enough for the opportunity to work with him on a video. I'm so appreciative. So guys, show some support to him as well. If this video did help you, drop a like, drop a subscribe to his channel, and I might see you guys again. We'll see. But that's going to be the end of the video, guys. Have a good one. Peace out.